The call came during my lunch break, Ryan's voice cracking with an urgency I'd never heard before. "Get out of the house now, Tessa. Don't pack, don't ask questions. Just go to your parents' place and wait for me there." I gripped my phone tighter, my sandwich forgotten on my desk. "Ryan, what's going on? Please just trust me on this. I'll explain everything later." The line went dead. My hands trembled as I gathered my purse. The marketing proposal I'd spent weeks perfecting lay abandoned on my computer screen. 3 months of marriage, and already my world was tilting on its axis. Taking off early? Sarah from accounting peered over her cubicle wall. Family emergency. The words tasted bitter. I'd used the same excuse last week when Margaret, my mother-in-law, had orchestrated another of her impromptu family dinners, the ones where she'd parade Clara around like some sort of trophy daughter-in-law that never was. The drive home was a blur of red lights and horn blasts. My mind raced through possibilities, each worse than the last. Had something happened to Frank? Was Margaret finally making her move to destroy our marriage? Or was it Clara, with her perfectly timed appearances and lingering touches on Ryan's arm? I pulled into our driveway, half expecting to find the house in flames. Instead, everything looked exactly as I'd left it this morning. The newspaper still on the porch, my gardening gloves draped over the railing. The normalcy felt wrong, somehow more threatening than any visible danger. My phone buzzed. A text from Clara. "Heard about Ryan's call. Just checking if you're okay. We're all worried." We. That single word sent ice through my veins. How did she know about the call? And who exactly was we? I deleted the message without responding and dialed Ryan again. Straight to voicemail. Inside the house, everything seemed undisturbed, but the air felt heavy with secrets. I grabbed my laptop and a few essential documents from our home office. Whatever was happening, I wasn't walking into it blind. Another text buzzed through, Margaret this time. "Dear, perhaps we should talk before you do anything rash. Family matters are best handled within the family." I laughed, a harsh sound in the empty house. Family. Right. Because she treated me like family from day one, hadn't she? With her subtle digs about my career, her constant reminiscing about Ryan and Clara's childhood together, her pointed comments about traditional values. The front door creaked. I froze, clutching my laptop to my chest. "Tessa." Clara's voice floated through the hallway. "Your car's outside. I know you're home." I slipped into the kitchen, my heart hammering. Through the window, I could see Paul's car idling in the street, Clara's brother waiting behind the wheel. "We're just trying to help," Clara called out, her footsteps moving closer. "Margaret's worried sick about Ryan. He's not been himself lately, has he? Ever since the wedding." I eased open the back door, thankful I'd had it oiled last week. Clara's voice continued, honey sweet and reasonable, as I crept along the side of the house. My phone vibrated again. "Ryan? Don't let them find you." "Almost there. 10 minutes. I ran. Past the garden where Margaret had criticized my choice of flowers. Past the fence Ryan and I had painted together on our first weekend as homeowners. Past all the dreams I'd had of belonging to this family. As I pulled out of the neighborhood, I caught a glimpse of Clara in my rearview mirror, standing in our driveway with her phone pressed to her ear. She wasn't smiling anymore. I drove to my parents' house with my hands clenched on the steering wheel, my wedding ring catching the afternoon sun. Whatever game they were playing, whatever trap they'd set, they'd chosen the wrong woman to underestimate. I sat at my parents' kitchen table, staring at the family photos lining their walls. Happy faces, genuine smiles. Nothing like the brittle pleasantries at the Morgan family dinners. The memory of last week's disaster surfaced, sharp as broken glass. "More wine, Tessa dear?" Margaret had held the bottle over my glass, not waiting for an answer. "Clara, you remember how Ryan used to hate red wine, until you introduced him to that lovely Bordeaux on your trip to France?" Clara's laugh had tinkled like wind chimes. "Oh, that was ages ago. Before university, wasn't it, Ryan?" I'd watched my husband's face tighten. "I don't remember that trip." "Of course you do," Margaret had insisted. "It was right after that summer you two dated." The silence that followed had been deafening. Ryan had never mentioned dating Clara. Not once in our 2 years together. Now, sitting in my childhood home, I pulled out my phone and scrolled through old social media posts. There they were, Ryan and Clara, tagged in countless photos over the years. Family vacations, holiday celebrations, casual dinners. In every image, Clara stood just a little too close, her hand always finding its way to Ryan's arm or shoulder. The doorbell rang, startling me from my investigation. Through the peephole, I saw Frank Morgan shifting nervously on the porch. "Tessa." His voice was barely above a whisper. "Can we talk?" I opened the door but blocked the entrance. "Does Margaret know you're here?" He shook his head, looking older than his 62 years. "She thinks I'm at the hardware store. May I come in?" In the kitchen, Frank's hands trembled as he accepted a cup of coffee. I should have said something sooner. About Clara, about all of it. "Why now?" "Because I heard them planning." He stared into his cup. "Margaret and Clara, they were in the garden yesterday, talking about your honeymoon next month." My stomach clenched. "What about it?" "Clara's brother Paul. He's been following you, taking pictures. They're going to send them to Ryan, edited to make it look like." He trailed off, unable to finish. The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. "That's why Ryan called me today? Because of their photos?" Frank nodded. "He found them on his computer this morning. Clara must have uploaded them when she was over for dinner." "She's not well, Tessa. Her obsession with Ryan. It's gotten worse since the wedding. And Margaret encourages it. Margaret sees what she wants to see. She's always viewed Clara as the daughter she never had." He met my eyes. The daughter she could control. My phone buzzed, another text from Clara. "Just talk to Ryan. He's worried about your mental state. We all are. Let's meet and sort this out." I showed Frank the message. His face crumpled. "They'll try to isolate you, make you look unstable. It's what they did to Ryan's last girlfriend before you. Margaret convinced everyone the poor girl was mentally ill, spreading rumors about the family. What happened to her? She moved away. Changed her name, I think." Frank stood, his coffee untouched. "I should go. But Tessa, be careful. Margaret's been playing these games for 40 years. She's very good at them." After he left, I sat alone in the growing darkness, pieces clicking into place. The constant surveillance, the orchestrated run-ins with Clara, the subtle undermining of my confidence. They'd been laying groundwork for months. My phone lit up with Ryan's message. "On my way. Don't trust anything they say. I have proof." I walked to my old bedroom, where a photo album from my wedding day sat on the bookshelf. Flipping through it, I found what I was looking for. A candid shot of Clara watching Ryan during our first dance. Her expression wasn't one of friendly affection or even jealousy. It was hunger. The front door opened downstairs. Footsteps on the stairs, too heavy to be my parents. "Tessa." Ryan's voice. "Are you up here?" I closed the album, my decision made. They wanted to play games? Fine. But they'd forgotten something crucial. In marketing, my entire career was built on understanding human nature and manipulating perceptions. Time to show them how it's really done. Ryan spread the doctored photos across my parents' dining room table. Each one told a carefully crafted lie. Me embracing Paul in shadowy doorways, slipping into hotel lobbies, sharing intimate conversations in cafes. The timestamps matched days I'd been working late at the office. "Clara's brother has been following you for weeks," Ryan said, his voice tight. "They planted these on my work computer this morning, along with emails they'd fabricated between you and Paul." I picked up one photo, studying how they'd manipulated the lighting to make an innocent business lunch look like a clandestine meeting. "Your mother's fingerprints are all over this." She slipped up. Ryan pulled out his phone, playing a voice recording. Margaret's voice filled the room. "Once Ryan sees these, he'll have to admit Tessa isn't who he thinks she is. Clara will be there to help him through it, just like before." My fingers clenched around the photo. Before. Ryan's face darkened. "Remember what Dad said about my last girlfriend? There's more. Clara created a similar setup with doctored photos back then. But this time..." He hesitated. "This time she made a mistake. Left metadata on the original photos showing when they were actually taken." A text lit up my phone, Clara again. "Ryan's not thinking clearly. Let me help fix this. I care about both of you. She's getting desperate," I said, showing Ryan the message. "There's something else." He pulled out a USB drive. Dad found this in Mom's study. It's everything, years of manipulation. Photos she edited, emails she faked, even a journal where she planned how to break up my relationships. She's been grooming Clara as my backup plan since high school. The front door opened downstairs. My parents' voices drifted up, followed by another Frank's. "They're here," Frank called up. "Margaret and Clara." They followed me. Ryan moved to the window. "Paul's car is blocking the driveway." I gathered the photos, my marketing brain already spinning possibilities. "Let them come up. I want to hear how they explain these timestamps." "Tessa." Ryan touched my arm. "They're dangerous when cornered." "So am I." Footsteps on the stairs. Clara appeared first, all concerned smiles and gentle hands. "Oh, thank goodness you're both here. We've been so worried." Margaret followed, her face a mask of maternal concern. "Ryan, darling, step away from her. You don't know what she's capable of." I held up one of the doctored photos. "Interesting choice of editing software, Clara. Adobe's timestamp feature is quite revealing." Color drained from Clara's face. Margaret stepped forward, reaching for the photo. "You're confused, dear. Those pictures show Paul following me for weeks?" I pulled out my phone, clicking play on a recording app. "Or show how you and Clara plan to plant them on Ryan's computer. Because I have to say, discussing criminal conspiracy in your garden wasn't very smart." "You recorded us?" Clara's voice shook. "No." Frank stepped into the doorway. "I did." Margaret whirled on her husband. "You wouldn't dare." "I already have." Frank's voice was steady. "I sent copies to everyone, family, friends, Clara's fiancé. Even that private investigator you hired last year to follow Tessa. Turns out he has quite a conscience when he learns he's been manipulated into participating in stalking." Clara lunged for the photos, but Ryan blocked her path. "It's over, Clara. All of it." "You don't understand," Clara whispered. "We were meant to be together. Your mother promised." "My mother promised a lot of things," Ryan cut in. "To a lot of people. But she doesn't control me anymore. And neither do you." I watched Clara's facade crack, years of obsession and manipulation showing through. She turned to Margaret, desperate. Tell him about the plan, about how we were going to fix everything." But Margaret was staring at Frank, 30 years of control slipping through her fingers. "You weak, pathetic man. After everything I've done for this family." "That's exactly why I did it," Frank said quietly. "For our family. Our real family." I stepped forward, my voice steady. "You have two choices. Leave now and never contact us again, or we take everything, the photos, the recordings, the evidence of stalking, to the police." Clara's face contorted. "You wouldn't." I met her gaze, letting her see the truth. "Try me." The silence stretched, heavy with decades of manipulation and lies. Then Margaret turned, her shoulders stiff with fury, and walked out. Clara remained, staring at Ryan with naked longing. "Clara," I said softly, "don't make me prove how far I'll go to protect what's mine." She fled, her sobs echoing down the stairs. But I felt no victory, only a cold certainty that this was just the beginning. The email arrived at midnight. A single photo attachment from an anonymous account. My hand shook as I opened it. Margaret and Clara outside a psychiatric facility, dated 3 years ago. The caption read, "Ask Ryan about Jessica." I stared at my sleeping husband on my parents' guest bed. His face troubled even in rest. Jessica. The name scratched at something in my memory. A whispered conversation at our wedding reception, quickly silenced when I'd approached. My phone buzzed. "Frank. Need to meet. Alone. The diner on 5th. Now." Ryan stirred. "Everything okay?" "Just work." I lied, the words bitter on my tongue. "Go back to sleep." The diner was empty except for Frank, hunched over a coffee cup. When I slid into the booth, he pushed a manila envelope across the table. "Jessica Martinez," he said. Ryan's fiancée before Clara orchestrated her breakdown. Inside the envelope, newspaper clippings told the story. Jessica Martinez, promising young attorney, committed after a public breakdown. Released 6 months later, she disappeared completely. Clara didn't just want to break them up, Frank continued. She wanted to destroy Jessica. And Margaret helped. How? The same way they're trying with you. Small things at first, moving items in Jessica's house, sending emails from fake accounts, arranging coincidental meetings that made her look unstable. He paused. Ryan never knew the full truth. He thought Jessica's breakdown was real. My coffee grew cold as Frank detailed their methodology. The gaslighting, the carefully planted evidence, the slow isolation from friends and family. Why tell me this now? Because they're escalating faster with you. They learned from their mistakes with Jessica. Frank's hands trembled. Margaret's already contacted your firm's HR department. Anonymous concerns about your mental health. The diner's fluorescent lights suddenly felt too bright. Ryan would never believe. Ryan believed it about Jessica. Frank's eyes were haunted. He trusted his mother's concern then. And Clara. She's perfected her role as the supportive friend. My phone lit up with a text from Clara. Ryan's worried about you sneaking out at night. Let me help before things get worse. They're watching the house, I realized. Frank nodded. Paul's car. 2 blocks down. I scrolled through my photos, finding the one from my wedding. Clara watching Ryan during our first dance. The hunger in her eyes matched the woman who'd stood outside that psychiatric facility. There's something else, Frank said. Jessica didn't just disappear. The diner's door chimed. Clara walked in, her concerned smile perfectly practiced. Oh, thank goodness, she gushed. Ryan's been frantic. He woke up and you were gone. She reached for my arm. I jerked away. Don't touch me. Sweetie, you're not well. We can all see it. Her voice dripped sympathy. The paranoia, the late-night wanderings, the accusations. Just like poor Jessica. Clara. Frank's voice held a warning. She ignored him. Ryan's waiting outside. Let's get you home, get you help. Before you hurt yourself. Through the diner's windows, I saw Ryan's car pulling up. Margaret in the passenger seat. The trap was closing. I stood, my chair scraping loudly. You know what happened to Jessica, don't you? Clara's mask slipped for just a moment. Jessica was sick. She needed help. No. The revelation hit like lightning. She figured it out. That's why she disappeared. She wasn't running from a breakdown. She was running from you. Tessa. Ryan's voice from the doorway. Mom told me about the HR complaints. About your behavior. I met his eyes, seeing the doubt there. The same doubt that had probably clouded his judgment with Jessica. But I wasn't Jessica. Tell him, Clara, I said softly. Tell him about the facility. About the photos. Clara's composure cracked. Ryan, she's confused. The timestamps don't lie. I pulled out my phone, showing the anonymous email. Neither do psychiatric facility visitor logs. Should we call them? See who visited Jessica before her breakdown? The diner fell silent. In that moment, I saw my choices clearly. Run like Jessica or stand and fight. And I'd never been good at running. Ryan, I said, not breaking eye contact with Clara. I think it's time you heard the whole story about your ex-fiancé. The package arrived 3 days after the diner confrontation. No return address, just my name in careful handwriting. Inside, a USB drive and a note. You're not the first. You won't be the last. J. My hands trembled as I plugged it into my laptop. Video files, dozens of them, showing Clara and Margaret's methodical destruction of Jessica Martinez. Security footage, phone recordings, emails, a digital breadcrumb trail of calculated madness. I found Jessica. Ryan's voice made me jump. He stood in the doorway of our temporary bedroom at my parents' house, his face ashen. She's in Seattle, working under her mother's maiden name. Did you talk to her? She agreed to video call. Tonight. He sat heavily on the bed. She said Clara visited her in the facility, told her if she ever came back, there'd be worse consequences than a psychiatric hold. My phone buzzed. Clara's fiancé, James. Can we meet? Something's not right with Clara. I showed Ryan the message. It's probably a trap. Or an opportunity. Ryan's jaw tightened. James needs to know what he's getting into. The cafe was crowded enough to feel safe. James sat alone, turning his coffee cup nervously. When he saw us, his face crumpled. Clara's pregnant, he blurted out. At least, that's what she told Margaret. But when I called her doctor, Let me guess, I said. No record of pregnancy. He nodded. And I found these. He slid his phone across the table. Photos of Clara outside our house watching through windows. Dozens of them spanning months. She doesn't know I saw them. My phone lit up, Frank. Margaret's gone. Cleared out her accounts this morning. They're making their move, Ryan muttered. James leaned forward. There's more. Clara's been meeting someone at the psychiatric facility where Jessica stayed. A doctor. They're building a case. The cafe door chimed. Clara walked in, her face a perfect mask of concern. Behind her, Paul blocked the exit. James, darling. Her voice dripped honey. I've been so worried. When Mother Morgan said you were meeting them. She placed a protective hand over her non-existent pregnancy. Stop lying, Clara. James stood. I know about the photos. About Jessica. Clara's mask slipped, just for a moment. They've poisoned you against me. Just like they're trying to poison everyone. She turned to the other customers. My fiancé's sister is mentally ill. We're just trying to get her help. People started staring. Phones came out. Recording this? I stood slowly. Good. Because Clara Bennett and Margaret Morgan are about to be famous for all the wrong reasons. You don't want to do this, Paul warned, moving closer. Actually, I do. I opened my laptop, turning it to face the growing crowd. Jessica Martinez sent me something interesting. Want to see how they drove her to a breakdown? Or should we start with the fake pregnancy records Clara's been creating? Clara lunged for the laptop. You stupid bitch. There it is. Ryan's voice cut through the chaos. He held up his phone, recording. The real Clara Bennett. She froze, realizing her mistake. The cafe had gone silent. Dozens of phones capturing her transformation from concerned friend to snarling aggressor. Where's my mother? Ryan asked quietly. Clara's laugh was brittle. Somewhere you'll never find her. She's making sure everything's ready. For when Tessa has her inevitable breakdown. You mean like this? I pressed play on Jessica's video. Clara's voice filled the cafe. Just sign the commitment papers, Jessica. Admit you're unstable, and this all goes away. James backed away from Clara, horror dawning on his face. What have you done? What I had to do. Clara's composure cracked completely. He was supposed to be mine. Margaret promised. After Jessica, after every other girl she helped me eliminate. She turned to Ryan, desperate. We were meant to be together. Your mother understood that. No, Ryan said softly. My mother used you. Just like she used everyone else. My phone buzzed one final time, an email from Jessica. Sending this to every news outlet now. Good luck. Clara saw the headline appear on my screen. Systematic gaslighting ring exposed. Prominent family's mental health manipulation scheme. In that moment, watching Clara's world implode, I felt no satisfaction. Only a bone-deep weariness and a single burning question. Where was Margaret, and what final trap had she set? The answer came sooner than expected, as police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. The police didn't come for Clara. They came for me. Tessa Morgan, the officer read from his tablet. You're wanted for questioning regarding allegations of stalking, harassment, and cyber threats against Clara Bennett and Margaret Morgan. The cafe had gone silent. Phones still recorded, but now they were pointed at me. Clara's mask of victimhood slipped perfectly back into place, tears streaming down her face. See, she whispered. This is exactly what we were afraid of. Ryan stepped forward. This is ridiculous. We have proof. Of elaborate forgeries, Paul interrupted, holding up a folder. Created by your wife to harass my sister. The metadata proves it. My laptop. The USB drive. Everything Jessica sent. They'd somehow corrupted it all, twisted it back against me. I watched the officer scroll through what looked like my emails, my photos, all doctored to show an obsession with destroying Clara's life. Check the timestamps. I started, but Clara cut in. Just like with Jessica, she sobbed. She's trying to recreate what happened, but making me the villain this time. The doctors warned us this might happen. My phone buzzed one last time before the officer confiscated it. Frank? Margaret's at your office. She's speaking to HR now. The pieces clicked together. While we'd been focused on Clara's breakdown, Margaret had been methodically destroying my credibility, my career, my life. Ryan. I turned to my husband, seeing doubt flicker across his face. Don't let them do this. He reached for me, but the officer stepped between us. Sir, given the nature of the allegations, you should maintain distance until. He's my husband. And my son. Margaret's voice cut through the chaos. She stood in the cafe doorway, elegant and composed. Who were trying to protect from your escalating behavior. The room spun. Everything we'd gathered, every piece of evidence, they'd planned for it all, turned it against us, made me look exactly like Jessica. Obsessed, unstable, dangerous. The psychiatric hold is temporary, the officer said quietly. Just until. No. Ryan's voice cracked. Mom, stop this. Margaret touched his arm. Sweetheart, we tried to handle this privately. But after what happened at the office today. What happened at the office? My voice sounded distant, strange. Security footage of you threatening Clara this morning, Paul supplied smoothly. Very convincing performance. But I hadn't been near the office. I'd been. The realization hit like ice water. They'd planned this months ago. Built their case while we thought we were building ours. Show them, I whispered to Ryan. Jessica's video call tonight. Already handled, Margaret said softly. The real Jessica Martinez called earlier, very disturbed by your attempts to impersonate her. She's willing to testify about your obsession with her story. Clara stepped closer, her voice gentle. Let them help you, Tessa. Like they helped me understand my feelings about Ryan weren't healthy. The ultimate twist, making Clara the reformed obsessive and me the new threat. I looked at James, still clutching his phone. The photos weren't taken by Clara, Paul finished. The metadata shows they came from your phone. Stalking her, building your case. Very thorough. The officer took my arm. Through the cafe window, I saw the news vans arriving. Margaret had orchestrated every detail, down to the public breakdown they predicted I'd have. Ryan, I tried one last time, but Clara was already beside him, playing the supportive friend. We'll take care of him, Margaret promised, while you get the help you need. As they led me out, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the cafe window. Wild-eyed, disheveled, exactly how they wanted me to look. How they planned for me to look. The news cameras rolled as I was guided into the police car. Through the window, I watched Clara comfort Ryan. Margaret standing protectively nearby. The perfect family tableau, with me cast as the unstable outsider who tried to destroy their happiness. Don't worry, the officer said kindly. The facility has an excellent reputation. The same facility where Jessica had been held. Where Clara had threatened her. Where they'd perfected their technique. The car door closed, sealing me in silence. In the rearview mirror, I saw Margaret smile. The facility's visitor room smelled of artificial lavender and despair. 3 days of observation had taught me their routines, their blind spots. Now I waited, watching Margaret and Clara arrange themselves across the table. Their faces masks of rehearsed concern. The doctors say you're not cooperating, Margaret began. I smiled, the same empty smile Clara had perfected. How's Ryan? Worried sick, Clara answered quickly. He wanted to come, but you couldn't risk him seeing the real Jessica Martinez, could you? Their mask slipped just slightly. Margaret recovered first. The delusions are getting worse. Dr. Andrews warned us. Dr. Andrews. I placed a USB drive on the table. The same one who helped you forge Jessica's commitment papers? He's been very cooperative since the FBI started investigating medical fraud. Clara's hand trembled as she reached for her water glass. You're lying. Am I? I turned to the observation window. Frank. The door opened. Frank walked in, followed by Ryan and a woman I recognized from Jessica's photos. The real Jessica Martinez. Hello, Clara, Jessica said softly. It's been 3 years. Margaret stood so quickly her chair toppled. This is inappropriate. My daughter-in-law is having an episode. Your daughter-in-law, Ryan cut in, has been working with federal investigators for the past 72 hours. Every conversation in this facility is recorded, including your little chat with Dr. Andrews yesterday. Clara lunged for the door, but Frank blocked her path. Paul confessed everything, he said. About the faked photos, the forged emails. He took a plea deal this morning. You don't understand, Clara whispered, turning to Ryan. Everything I did was for us. Margaret promised. Margaret promised a lot of things, Jessica interrupted. To a lot of women. How many were there before me, Margaret? How many lives did you and Clara destroy to keep Ryan under your control? I stood, finally letting my mask fall. The thing about marketing? We understand patterns. Narratives. Once Jessica reached out, it wasn't hard to find the others. 6 women. 6 mental breakdowns. 6 lives destroyed. You planned this, Margaret hissed. Used your own commitment to trap us. I learned from the best. I moved closer, watching her facade crack. But unlike you, I had something you never expected. Actual proof. Actual witnesses. And a husband who chose me. Clara screamed, a raw sound of desperation, and threw herself at Ryan. She's lying. Just like the others. I'm the only one who truly loves you. The orderlies rushed in, but it was Jessica who spoke, her voice cutting through Clara's hysteria. That's exactly what you said before you visited me here. Before you told me what would happen if I ever came back. Ryan stepped away from Clara's grasping hands. It's over, Clara. The FBI has everything. The fake documents, the surveillance footage, Dr. Andrews' confession. Even Mom's offshore accounts where she paid everyone off. Margaret's composure finally shattered. You ungrateful. She lunged at me, but the orderlies were faster. I watched them restrain both women, their carefully constructed world crumbling around them. You know what your biggest mistake was? I asked softly, assuming I'd play by your rules. That I'd break like the others. You'll regret this, Margaret spat as they led her away. You have no idea what I'm still capable of. Actually, Frank interrupted, we do. That's why I gave the FBI access to all your private accounts this morning, including the ones in the Caymans. Clara's sobs echoed down the hallway. Ryan took my hand as Jessica spoke with the federal agents. I'm sorry, he whispered, for doubting even for a moment. I squeezed his hand, watching Margaret and Clara being led away in handcuffs instead of me. You came through when it mattered. Frank touched my shoulder. The others are here. The women Margaret and Clara targeted. They're ready to testify. I nodded, feeling the weight of the past weeks finally lifting. We'd won, but the victory felt hollow somehow. Looking at Clara's broken form and Margaret's hatred, I realized revenge wasn't what I'd really wanted. Justice was. And as I walked out of the facility a free woman, I knew we'd found something better than revenge. We'd found truth. And sometimes that's the greatest victory of all. The courtroom emptied slowly after Margaret's sentencing. 20 years for conspiracy, fraud, and false imprisonment. Clara had taken a plea deal, trading testimony for a lighter sentence. Paul would serve 5 years for his role. Justice served cold and clean. I lingered in my seat, staring at the judge's empty bench, until Ryan touched my shoulder. Ready? Almost. I pulled out an old photograph I'd found while packing up his childhood home. Margaret, much younger, stood beside another woman who shared her calculating smile. The back read, Margaret and Helen, sisters in arms. Dad confirmed it this morning, I said. Your Aunt Helen did the same thing to him that Margaret tried to do to you. Isolated him, controlled his relationships. It wasn't just about keeping you. It was about recreating her sister's perfect family fantasy. Ryan studied the photo. Helen died in a psychiatric facility. Dad always said she had problems, but now we know what really happened. I handed him another photo. Helen with a young Margaret, teaching her the art of manipulation. The pattern started long before us. Frank waited by the courthouse steps with Jessica and the other survivors. 6 women whose lives Margaret and Clara had nearly destroyed. Now they stood tall, unbroken. The support group meets next week, Jessica said. We're calling it Phoenix Rising. She smiled. From the ashes, you know? I watched them share knowing looks, these women who'd faced the same darkness I had. Their strength wasn't in revenge or even justice. It was in refusing to let the experience define them. The house is almost packed up, Frank said. Found this in Margaret's study. He handed me a leather-bound journal. Might help explain some things. Or not. Sometimes understanding the monster doesn't make it less monstrous. Inside, Margaret's elegant handwriting detailed decades of manipulation, not just of Ryan but of everyone around her. The last entry, dated the day before her arrest, read, "Tessa sees the game now. But she doesn't understand. It's not about winning. It's about playing forever." She thought she was teaching me. I realized. Every move, every countermove, she was grooming me to become her, just like Helen groomed her. Ryan took the journal, his face troubled. "We could burn it. End the pattern here." "No." I closed the journal firmly. "It belongs in evidence. For the next time someone like Margaret tries to play these games." We walked to our car, leaving the courthouse and its justice behind. Frank headed to his new apartment, free from Margaret's shadow. Jessica and the others dispersed, carrying their victory like shields against future darkness. At home, our real home, not the battlefield it had become, I found one last photo that Margaret had hidden. Ryan as a child, smiling genuinely, before his mother's manipulation had dimmed his light, before Clara had been positioned as his savior, before the games began. "We're having dinner with your parents tonight," Ryan said, watching me study the photo. "Mom wants to hear about the support group. My mother's cooking. My father's bad jokes. Simple things that Margaret had tried to twist into weapons. But she'd failed, because she'd never understood what real family meant." The doorbell rang, a delivery. Inside the package, a letter from Clara, forwarded by her lawyer. I started to tear it up, then stopped. Understanding the past didn't mean letting it control our future. I placed the unopened letter in a box with Margaret's journal and the old photos. Evidence of a pattern we'd broken. A legacy we'd refused to inherit. "Ready for dinner?" Ryan asked. I looked around our home at the life we were reclaiming. The shadows were still there, but they no longer held power. Margaret had wanted to teach me her game, but she'd taught me something else instead. How to end it. "Ready," I said, leaving the box of shadows behind. Sometimes victory isn't in winning the game. It's in refusing to play. And sometimes the best revenge is simply living well, on your own terms in the light.